Coming up, a buzzer beater in OKC, and Donovan Mitchell gets a little bit of revenge against the Jazz. This is Locked On Game to Game NBA.
Every game, every team, every angle. Locked On Game to Game, your team every day.
Welcome in. You're watching Locked On Game to Game NBA, local experts going over the biggest stories on the hardwood. I'm your host, Kainani Stevens. Thank you so much for making Locked On your first listen every single weekday. We're going to recap the action for you across the NBA on Monday. We start out with the Mavericks, who lost Luka Doncic and coach Jason Kidd to ejection in the second half. They then lost the game to the Timberwolves in Minnesota as a result. Anthony Edwards went off to take advantage of the chance for the Wolves, and Locked On hosts from both teams go over the two very different stories from each side.
Finally, the Timberwolves were the most composed team on the court in a game. I'm Ben Beacon with Locked On Wolves. The Timberwolves defeated the Dallas Mavericks by 10. The game really wasn't all that close. Luka Doncic and Jason Kidd both ejected in the third quarter of this game, and the Wolves again rode Anthony Edwards to a victory. He had a near triple-double, 27, 13, and 9, controlled the pace of the game. Didn't shoot the ball that efficiently, but he got to the line a bunch, was active defensively, orchestrated the Wolves' offense, effectively ran the offense once again for the majority of the time he was on the floor. And the Wolves did a great job guarding Luka Doncic. They really bothered him. Jaden McDaniel's length was really important in this game to slowing down Doncic. And despite the fact the Mavericks shot 7 more free throws than the Wolves, they were particularly upset with the officiating in this game. The Timberwolves flustered Dallas from the opening tip, and that's the story of this one. We'll talk about it on the post-game podcast. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Wolves for all things Timberwolves.
Pascal Siakam had a standout performance for the Raptors, but it wasn't enough to prevent Toronto from taking its 6th consecutive loss. Locked On Raptors looks at the latest cold streak for Canada's NBA team.
Siakam nearly stops the bleeding, but the Raptors dropped their 6th straight. Sean Woodley here from Locked On Raptors to break down the Toronto Raptors 104-101 loss to the Philadelphia 76ers on the road on Monday night. And overall, this was a spirited effort for a team that has been on hard times of late. They had one of their best defensive efforts they've had in almost a month, honestly. It was really impressive the way they bothered Joel Embiid and James Harden for points in this game. Pascal Siakam, very good on that end. OG Anunoby was a stud in his return from injury, but the offense let the Raptors down in this one. Just 2 points in the overtime, and they just can't stop the bleeding. This team desperately needs just a single win to get back in the W column. Instead, they're 13-18 and losing touch with the upper reaches of the Eastern Conference fast. The thing that gives you hope, though, if you're a Raptors fan, is Pascal Siakam is on your team. 38 points from him, 15 boards, and 6 assists. Just the 4th time a 35, 15, and 5 has ever been put up by a Toronto Raptor in franchise history. Siakam was brilliant, as he has been for the most part all season long, and he is the reason why. All this talk about, oh, should the Raptors blow it up? Should they move on from their current core? Makes no sense, because you do not just trade away dudes like Pascal Siakam. At some point, his incredible play will push this team over the top as they get healthy, but right now it is hard times in Toronto. They'll try again on Wednesday against the red-hot Knicks to get back in the win column. I'll have this broken down more on tomorrow's Locked On Raptors. Be sure to tune in.
Giannis versus Zion resulted in a Milwaukee win last night, with Antetokounmpo reminding us why he's the 2-time MVP with a 43-point performance. Both Locked On Bucks and Pelicans review Giannis's big night, while Zion stayed quiet.
The Bucks started a season-long road trip in New Orleans, stifled Zion Williamson, and improved on their NBA best record in the process. My name's Kane Pittman. I'm the host of the Locked On Bucks podcast. Zion versus Giannis, the matchup that we all get excited to see. But on this night, it was the Milwaukee triangle of terror on the defensive end that stopped Zion in this game. Drew Holiday is the primary defender. Then you got Giannis and Brook Lopez behind with the help. And Zion wasn't able to get anything going in this one. He finishes with 18 points, 7 for 16 from the floor. The Bucks have won this year on defense. They did it again tonight. By the way, they also got 42 and 10 from Giannis and 30 from Brook Lopez. Size mattered in this game. The Bucks win. They continue to win. NBA's best record. Catch Locked On Bucks wherever you get your podcasts or on YouTube.
After losing to the Bucks, the Pelicans are on a 4-game losing streak. Are there deeper problems in New Orleans? I'm Jake Madison, host of Locked On Pelicans and Locked On NBA. After looking like true title contenders, the Pelicans are subtly struggling and on a 4-game losing streak. I wouldn't worry too much about losing to the Bucks. This is a title contending team with a former MVP, and their defense with its length is tailor-made to slow down Zion Williamson. It wasn't until midway through the fourth quarter that Zion got going, and even then, 18 points on 16 shots is a bad game for him. It's just a poor matchup for the Pels. But it's tough to make sense of what's going on with this team as different issues have come up. Defensive rebounding has been a struggle, defense, a lack of offense. But after this loss and a big one earlier in the season to the Celtics, it may be safe to say the Pelicans aren't in that title contending tier just yet. Good news is they have winnable games coming up, and Brandon Ingram should be back soon. Perfect time to try and figure things out.
Coming up, Oklahoma City spoils Damian Lillard's big night. This is Locked On Game to Game NBA. Today's edition of Locked On Game to Game is brought to you by BetOnline. It is the #1 spot for all of your online sports gambling needs. Whether it's the latest odds or trends, whatever sport you are interested in betting on, you can do that at betonline.net. It's where the game starts. Welcome back to Locked On Game to Game NBA. I'm your host, Kainani Stevens. Thank you for making Locked On your first listen every weekday. Damian Lillard set the Blazers' scoring record on Monday, but Shai Gilgeous-Alexander stole the spotlight with a game-winning shot at the buzzer for OKC. Locked On Thunder and Trailblazers recap that thrilling finish.
The Oklahoma City Thunder beat the Portland Trailblazers on a historic night where Dame became Portland's all-time leading scorer. But it was Shai who had the last laugh. After a bad first half from Shai, he hits the game winner at the end at the buzzer to send OKC to victory. But the story of the game was OKC's bench playing incredibly well. With 5, 6, 7 guys in double figures for the offense, the Thunder played their most complete game in this win over Portland.
Well, that was not how that was supposed to go. Damian Lillard becomes the Trailblazers' all-time leading scorer when he hits a free throw late in the third quarter, but the Blazers lose at the buzzer to Oklahoma City. I'm Mike Richmond, host of Locked On Blazers, and with his family in attendance on a night that was supposed to be about Damian Lillard passing Clyde Drexler and becoming the Blazers' all-time leading scorer on path to being the greatest Trailblazer of all time. Blazers lost to a below 500 team because they turned the ball over twice in the final 30 seconds and couldn't get a stop in the final 3 seconds when Shai Gilgeous-Alexander hit a baseline mid-range jumper to end it. What a bummer. A special night for Dame ruined. Listen to Locked On Blazers for more.
Donovan Mitchell showed up in his first game against the Jazz since they traded him to Cleveland this summer, leading the Cleveland Cavaliers to a win. Both Locked On Cavs and Jazz go over that reunion between Mitchell and Utah.
Chris Manning, Evan Dameler here, Locked On Cavs podcast. After the Cavs demolished the Utah Jazz on Monday night in Cleveland, Donovan Mitchell's first game against his old team, he was great. Darius Garland was great. Nothing really to not like about this Cavs performance, Evan.
It was the most complete performance I've seen by far this season for the Cavs, and we're still pretty early in the year. It's only December 20-ish, I believe. I don't know the date off the top of my head, but either way, it's a very complete performance for Cleveland, and I have to say, it is nice to see Ochai Agbaji play at Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse for once.
Look, Cavs looked rested, looked energetic, played with effort. Again, everything for them went right in this one. This was never really competitive, never really close. The Jazz pulled all their main players with 7 minutes left in the game. Easy win for the Cavs. For more Locked On Cavs, wherever you get your podcast.
For the second time on the road trip, the Utah Jazz get shut down by an elite defense. They went to Milwaukee, faced the #1 defense in the NBA. They came to Cleveland to face the #2 defense in the NBA, and the result both times the same, a blowout loss. David Locke of Locked On Jazz here. The Jazz fall to the Cavaliers 122-99. It was the Cavaliers' second-rated defense that dominated this game. The Jazz opened the game shooting 8 of 21 in the first quarter, scoring 21 points, and an offensive rating of a 91. By halftime, that offensive rating was down to 82, with a half-court offensive rating of a 56.7. The Jazz got dislodged. Their routes simply couldn't make their shots. Were 5 of 20 from the field. Their bench did not contribute, going going 4 of 34 in the first 3 quarters. In the reunion tour, Lauri Markkanen was fabulous. He had 24 points and 6 rebounds in his return to Cleveland. Donovan Mitchell was in complete control, scoring 23 points in 22 minutes against the Jazz.
The Orlando Magic made a big comeback to try and keep their winning streak alive, but the Hawks got the best of Orlando with a 1-point win in Atlanta when all was said and done. The Locked On hosts for both teams go over that close finish.
Hello, friends. My name is Brad Rowland, and the Atlanta Hawks hold on for dear life in what became a 126-125 victory over the Orlando Magic on this Monday evening. The Hawks were up by 12 points with 3 minutes to go in this contest, only to give up the lead. 13-0 run by Orlando, and the Hawks escape on a late foul against Dejounte Murray, who goes to the line, calmly sinks both, and they escape with this win. Murray, in his first game back after missing 5 games in a row, played 38 minutes. He was gutting it out down the stretch very clearly. John Collins also returned for the Hawks in this game, so some positives from this one. The Hawks were very good on offense for about 45 minutes in this spot, and then just being closer to full health. Only Clint Capella missed this game for Atlanta. That's certainly a positive. Defensively, it was a mixed bag, to be sure, but the Hawks do get a win here. They stop a 6-game winning streak from the Magic, and the Hawks now inch above 500 for the season at 16-15 overall. They're 10-5 at home, taking care of business at State Farm Arena, and plenty of positives to go along with certainly some negatives at the very end of this contest. We'll have full coverage and more on Locked On Hawks podcast.
Well, the Orlando Magic were not going to win 60-some-odd games in a row. We knew they'd lose eventually, and they finally did as their 6-game winning streak comes to an end to the Atlanta Hawks 126-125. But boy, it did not feel like the Orlando Magic wanted this thing to come to an end, despite not having a great defensive effort, despite looking tired and worn down from their road trip, although they've just been in Boston, but from a bunch of games packed together. This team fought, and when the Atlanta Hawks poked the bear with a technical foul on Trae Young after he showboated a little bit after going up 12 with 3 minutes to go, the Magic went on a 13-0 run to take the lead by 1 point. Now, Orlando made a lot of mistakes, and they're going to rue their defensive effort because that's been the backbone of this win streak. But the Orlando Magic fought and nearly stole a game against a quality team that they probably didn't have any business being in. Now the question is, how do they respond? The win streak is over. Do they rally back and build another one, or do they fall back again?
Chris Paul scored a season high in points. DeAndre Ayton added a double-double as the Suns beat the Lakers in a game where Anthony Davis, LeBron James, and Russell Westbrook did not play. Locked On Suns and Lakers recap the Phoenix blowout.
5 straight losses and then 3 straight wins for the Phoenix Suns. Brendan Clean here with Locked On Suns, coming to you after a 130-104 win by the Suns at home. No Devin Booker with the groin strain. And on the opposite side for the Lakers, no Anthony Davis, no LeBron James, and no Russell Westbrook. One of those nights in the NBA where you scratch your head at what you are even supposed to be entertained by, but nevertheless, the Suns take care of business. Again, winning by 26 at home. Chris Paul with a season-high 28. Mikal Bridges with a nice 20 as well, and the Suns defense getting the job done. For more on these Suns, listen to Locked On Suns wherever you get podcasts.
That's all for this edition of Locked On Game to Game NBA. I am your host, Kainani Stevens. Thank you so much for making Locked On your first listen every single weekday. Make sure you are subscribed to Locked On NBA and, of course, your favorite team's Locked On podcast. I'm Kainani Stevens. This has been Locked On Game to Game.